But here we have, on my left, Junaid Jemal Sendi, who's the principal dancer at Destino. On my immediate left, we've got Tara Jane Herbert, who's the artistic director of Dance United, and as you saw in the film, one of the principal choreographers of the piece at Sadler's Wells. On my immediate right, we've got Alan Davey. Alan was appointed Chief Executive of the Arts Council in November 2007. Prior to this position, he was Director for Culture at the DCMS. Next to him is Nikki Crane, an independent arts consultant, and her particular expertise lies in the field of arts and social inclusion, and she worked for the Arts Council on this very issue. A long time ago. And then we've got Mathew Taylor. Mathew is the Chief Executive of the RSA, and he has been since 2006. Prior to this, he was Chief Advisor on Political Strategy to the Prime Minister, who is then Tony Blair. So we have quite a range of expertise, experience and views. We'll have a conversation up here amongst ourselves and then open it out to you for your points and questions. I'm going to go to you first, Junaid. What I'll do is I'll put some questions to various people and then we'll take it from there. Now, in the film, it's very clear that you see yourself both as a professional dancer, but also as somebody who works with, in this case, disabled dancers. So there seems to be two types of practice going on there. Is that a contradiction for you?
I mean, that's like two, that's similar thing, because that like dance is the only international communication kind of thing that you can just deliver something with. And like working as a professional and also like working with community, for me, it's not different thing, because that's where I was, and then that's what I was feeling. And you can see clearly on the video that how much the young people were engaged to it, and then how much power that they were giving. And also we were learning from them, and then we were just refreshing ourselves. And then that's the connection that it has. It's just a circular thing, you know, you just start like that, and then you should always go back and then learn from them, and also like give it back, teach, and then also work and deliver whatever you want through body language.
Do you have to push them quite hard? Do you treat them like they're professional dancers, the community dancers?
Yeah, that's the way that you should encourage them from the very early, like, you know, you should always encourage them and saying, like, you know, you're gonna take them like to the top performance. You know, you just need to make them believe from early on, and then they will just respond very well after that. Like, you know, they'll just follow. Like, it's once they started, it's really, they'll be in it, and then they'll engage to it. Most, like, for young people, that's like the most really easy thing to teach or to deliver anything that you want.
Do you think it can do the things that are claimed it can do? So obviously there are lots of problems in Ethiopia, social, political, poverty. Is there a danger with giving dance too much to do? Can it really do all the things that Addis said in the film?
No, as I told you, like, it's you know, we didn't live, like, we're not only just working on this side, but we are also working on the professional level and performing, like, on the top level, doing everything we can. But, like, at the same time, dance is there to do whatever, like, whatever, you know, it won't be always a problem. Also, like, a good thing that you have in Ethiopia or around the world. And also, like, as you see, like, working with disabled, with older people, old people, and also with kindergarten, it doesn't matter. But, like, that's like a very unique thing, and a very, like, that's what they need, that you know, like, physically they really want it, and then also, like, it keeps them free, and also it just gives them something to experience, something new in their life for the first time. And then, you know, I remember myself, like, crying after we finished the very first choreography, because that was only one project, and then I don't know if I was gonna ever do it again, you know. But I was like just 10-year-old. Yeah, so you can just connect to it easily.
Tara, if I can come to you. What is it about dance that can achieve what is being said about it? Why not football or singing? Or...
Did anyone see the Holland-Spain match? Good question. I think the interesting thing about dance is that contemporary dance, is that you connect on different levels. And I think it seems so, for people who dance, I mean, are there many people in the room that dance? Show of hands, please. Thank you, be honest. Yes, very good, lovely. So it's, for a lot of people, it probably seems quite normal and natural, but there are so many connections that are made, particularly through contemporary dance, really simple things that we take for granted. So, for example, I'm actively connecting with you by making eye contact. And for a lot of young people, that is something that's very difficult to achieve. But dance does it in a very natural way, and I'm only making eye contact with you because I'm doing this movement, and at this point we need to make eye contact, and then you need to run through there. So I'm not drilling it home to you, but it's part of dance. I think on so many levels, on a trust level, sometimes, as I said in the DVD, you're physically in control of somebody's body, and that takes trust. I mean, I could probably go on forever, and I'm sure you don't want me to.
You also talk about stillness.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's my favourite subject, stillness. No, it really is, because I really think, that, I've said it before, but I will say it again, I think it's like an orchestra. An orchestra is silent before it starts, and I think that is what life is, and I think that's what dance is. And I think without that silence, there isn't time to breathe and to make sense of anything. You're just kind of reacting. And so stillness and focus for me is key, actually, to movement. Without it, I don't think there is movement.
I'm going to come to Nikki next. You've had about probably 7 or 8 years trying to put onto the policy agenda art for social inclusion. What are your experiences from that, and how do you suppose reconcile the tension between those? I have to admit, I'm one of them who said, what about the art? Does it get lost? Are you burdening the arts with all sorts of social problems? What do you say to people like me?
It's a huge question. And I've got Alan on my left who might beat me up if I say the wrong thing, but I worked for the Arts Council for 18 years, actually, which I'll come clean on straight away. I know, I'm wearing my badge and several scars, but I started off in dance and then set up what was called the Arts and Social Inclusion Department. I've never been able to sort of throw off that terminology. I wish we could find something new, but I'm guilty of not being able to find the same word, new words. I think there's a sort of false dichotomy that's come into all of this, which is a real shame, and which is why I love. I've seen this film obviously so many times, and just seeing the connection, the conversation that goes on, the exchange, the local, the international, the professional, the non-professional. And you probably can see from my body language that I feel tired, actually, that we've spent so many years arguing and discussing and chopping the world up into pieces. And, I just really would love to celebrate this work more and to get on with doing it as, bridging where all of these crevices, as I call them, are, because a lot of our energy disappears down those crevices. And that's where the creativity comes, if I could describe when I was at the Arts Council, we set up a really difficult relationship with the Youth Justice Board while I was there, and I can only describe that as a disequilibrium, an aggravation. But through that aggravation, a whole load of vitality and energising came into my work, and I just loved my work in a way that I'd never had done before, because there was so much conflict in it. And I was talking to people who hadn't got a clue what I was talking about, and in the end, we just beat hell out of each other and put each other through a mangle, and we still are doing to this very day. And in that, we keep moving and finding a fresh way of renewing this work, really. So I'm not really answering your question, but Tara would answer this better than me. In Dance United's work and in the work that I do with that company, it's very much art for art's sake. It's dance for dance sake. And we don't want to go down that line of social engineering or whatever else we get ourselves wound up about. Because we believe that we start with the dance and then the dance delivers of itself. And if you do that to the best of your ability and you just keep your eye on excellence the whole time, then the other outcomes flow out of that, and indeed they do. I think the other thing is that we've got into this sort of binary way of thinking. In institutions, it's an either or, because it's really difficult to work across those different areas, really, really hard. And we just have to keep doing that. It's about the paradoxes and about the contradictions, and I love that, and that's why I do this work, really.
Now, Mathew, I see you've been writing copious notes. I'm sure you've got something to say, but I'm interested in your views. Coming from the policy world, you've been very much involved in a high-level discussion about public policy, not necessarily the arts, from what I see of your experience. Are you persuaded by what you've heard this evening, that the arts can play the sort of role that is being said they can play?
Well, I don't think there's any question that that the arts can play a role in transforming individuals and their sense of self-esteem, and in mobilizing communities, in bringing communities together in interesting ways. I think the question that gets asked about work that is publicly funded, because I think there's a distinction between that which is publicly funded, that which isn't, is around issues of accountability. Now, if you are responsible for public policy, then you live in a world of accountability where you're required to explain whether the intervention that you've undertaken achieves the outcomes which it's supposed to achieve and achieves them at a reasonable cost. And of course, in the arts community, there's a natural suspicion towards those forms of accountability. And that has led, I think, to an incredibly unhelpful distinction between the kind of idea of art's inherent value and its instrumental value. And I think we have to try to unpackage that dichotomy and understand that, and I guess my starting point for this, which people may react against, is that actually all art is instrumental, in the sense that all art is pursued in relation to some goal. It's just that there's kind of high instrumentalism, which relates art to a kind of idea of human transcendence. And there's kind of what might be called prosaic instrumentalism, which is, well, you know, how many children from certain backgrounds did you get involved, and what kind of impact did it have on them, and how many people came. But I think if you can see these as different forms of instrumentalism, then it becomes more possible to reconcile them and recognize the legitimacy of both accounts of what it is you're trying to achieve, rather than what I think has tended to happen too often, which is a kind of view which is in the arts community, and I didn't see this at all in tonight's film. I just thought tonight's film was fantastic. And one of the things that I thought was really powerful about it was that people creating fantastic work were not afraid to talk about what that work meant and why they were doing that work. I feel that sometimes in the artistic community there is a kind of perverse obscurantism which says that any attempt to account for my work is somehow an infringement of my kind of civil liberties as an artist, even though I'm publicly funded. And then that sets that up against an equally kind of destructive bean-counting approach to accountability that says we're not slightly interested in the intrinsic merits of this work or the kind of inspiration behind this work. We just want you to demonstrate that you've achieved the same forms of accountability you might expect of hospitals or schools. So I think we need to overcome that. And I thought that was just the most fantastic film. I want to take it back immediately to my 17 and 14-year-old son and say, look at this. Because it isn't guilty of any of those kinds of, I didn't feel that film was guilty of any of that preciousness in terms of its kind of high artistic endeavor, nor was it guilty of a kind of crudeness in terms of its kind of social objectives. Those are brought together seamlessly. I think that's very powerful. And I can't resist this comment, by the way, which is, Tara Jane, you referred to the football match last night. But I think what was interesting about the football match last night was how people felt really hurt. I don't want to be precious about this, but they felt hurt. Not just the Spanish players, by the way. The Spanish players felt hurt as well. But people felt hurt by the way Holland played, because it felt as though here was a team sacrificing any kind of sense of football's higher purpose in pursuit of a kind of winner-takes-all mentality. And people said, no, that's just not... And, isn't it weird that World Cup is kind of great for your national image? I think Holland, it would have been better for Holland if they got out in round one, actually, than they played like that in the final. So there is actually interesting kind of parallel there.
Okay, Alan, you're obviously the funder, so you do hold organisations to account. Do you think Mathew's onto something here when he talks about really, I suppose, a scale of instrumentality? And is Nikki right when she says there's been really a false dichotomy between art that does good and art that is great? Do you recognise that?
I do. And I was just pondering while Nikki was talking about how we got there, indeed while Mathew was talking. And I mean, if you look at the history of the arts, we've kind of veered from one to the other. And especially there was a time from 1997 where, in order to get more money for the arts, we felt we had to talk about it in very different terms, and made a kind of odd conversion to instrumentality, if you want to use that word, which personally I don't anymore. And maybe we need to get much more eloquent, and I won't be doing that tonight, but maybe we need to, about what art really does. And what Mathew was right, on the film, and Junaid, you were talking about what was going on, and you were just telling it like it was. I mean, you weren't being pretentious. You were describing what was happening, and describing, the effect on you and some of the participants in that film, and we need more of that. But this false dichotomy between, access and excellence, as it's sometimes, or instrumentality and excellence and all that, and it has irritated me for many, many years now, but we haven't got it right yet. I mean, when I was in the department, you said I was in the department, and I was trying, my big mission in life was to talk to the people in the centre of government and say, there's a new way of describing what the arts do, which is actually honest, and which actually describes why you fund it. And you have to begin with the art, because if the art's no good, or if it's deliberately its ambition is hobbled in a false way, then what comes out of it actually won't be attractive to people, and people won't want to join in, and people won't want to participate. There's another great dance film, obviously not as good as this one, called Rhythm Is It, which is about a project in Berlin when Simon Rattle first went there. And he took a whole bunch of British dance people to do a big youth project with young people in Berlin. And at one point, it's Royston Muldoon is doing the choreography, and he's pushing the young people really, really hard, and the teacher says, "Don't, stop it. You're pushing them too hard. It's not right." And he said, "This is the whole point of what we're doing. If I pull back at this point and get them to accept second best, then I've betrayed them, and so have you." And that's always kind of stuck in my memory. And as a funder, we're under pressure at the moment with money, and there'll be cuts and all that kind of stuff. But I was looking back at what happened in 1981, looking back at kind of annual reports of the Arts Council. My predecessor was Secretary General Roy Shaw in 1981, I think it was, said, regrettably, we've had to cut our 2 grants to non-professional organisations this year. And so we're no longer funding any non-professional organisations. Now, I don't think that is even in question in the modern kind of funding system. That actually we do fund all kinds of people for all kinds of things. And, one of the most precious sets of things that are happening in this country at the moment is the way that professional artists are seeing, they have a kind of wider duty to the world and the world around them, and want to engage with people. I mean, it's part of their artistic practice, and I think that's a really good thing, and that's how you get beyond this instrumentality and excellence thing. You see it as a whole.
And now it's also about how artists are affected by it, because we tend to think of, we're always doing something to somebody else, as opposed to thinking about the traffic going the other way. When you see Russell Maliff and Adam Benjamin and Hofesh talking about they're really engaged with it, and you can see that it's a two-way process. So I think that's one of the things that we always get into. It's always about the participant, the impact on the participant, and we need to see it both ways. And actually, Rhythm As It was an earlier Dance United project.
Sorry,
So it was fine, but I couldn't let you get away with that one.
But presumably,
You're more polite than me, Tara.
but presumably you do have to hold your organisations that you fund to account.
Yeah.
And some of them will be because they, I don't know, painted something that nobody else has painted before in a way that nobody has ever painted. And others might be on the basis of audience number and the quality of their experience.
And I think we in the Arts Council acknowledge this. Over the years, we've been too crude about it, and we haven't been sophisticated enough about it. And what we've been trying to do in the last couple of years is get more sophisticated about it and get the achievements kind of described in artists' own terms, and acknowledge that in proper accountability terms. And I think we've got to get smarter and smarter at it. We've not cracked it yet, I don't think. But we just need to keep doing it and keep refining it and get it better and get it proportionate and get it appropriate and actually talk back to politicians who we're talking to about why we fund the arts, about the real reasons. And it is about its effect. You know, the marvellous stuff that's produced and its effect on people, whether people are watching it or joining in.
Yeah. Can I just say thank you to the Arts Council for, funding this film, because it was a time of quite great restraint in funding on that. And as Mathew says, in this film, the manifestation of all of these ideas in this film is so clear, and it means we can get it to a wider audience. And I think the more we can get work on film and shared with more people, the better.
Okay, well, I want to go out to you, and what I'm really keen to explore is moving on from the false dichotomy that Nikki talked about, and how we can begin to hold the arts to account for both their impact, but also the quality of experience and the quality of the work. So really, it's a future-looking ideas, really, from you. I've got two helpers with microphones. So can I see a show of hands for people who want to make a point?